The mountain was already watching when the boy chose to live alone. High above the village, where the air burned the lungs and snow stayed even in summer shadows, a young boy dragged his last load of wood up the slope. His hands were red. His coat was thin. His eyes were calm. He stopped where the rock wall curved inward and marked the spot with a knife. This was where his home would be. Down below, the village woke to another cold morning. Smoke rose from chimneys. Bells rang. Someone noticed the boy climbing again and laughed. "He's still up there," a man said. "He thinks he can beat the mountain," another replied. The boy had no family left. No land in the village. What he had was time, silence, and a sharp mind. While others talked, he listened. He listened to the wind changing tone at dusk. He listened to the ground cracking before snow. He listened to how cold moved, not fast, but patient. Instead of building on top of the ground like everyone else, he dug sideways into the slope. He did not fight the mountain. He entered it. Each day, he worked before sunrise. He cut short logs, not tall ones. He stacked them wide, not high. He packed dirt between wood, then bark, then stone. The walls grew thick. The shape curved inward, strange and uneven. It did not look strong. It looked wrong. Villagers climbed the trail to watch. Why is it half underground? Snow will bury it. Wood will freeze and split. The boy said nothing. He added a roof. Then another beneath it. Between the layers, he left space. Not empty space, planned space. He built narrow channels that bent instead of going straight. He carved vents that pointed away from the wind, not into it. He dug a ladder down under the floor, leading to a low chamber carved from earth. Children whispered that he was hiding something. Men joked that he was afraid of the sky. Women shook their heads and said winter would teach him better. The boy heard every word. At night, he tested the cabin. He lit a small fire, then closed one door and opened another. He watched where heat moved. He waited hours, sometimes all night, feeling the walls, counting breaths. When something felt wrong, he tore it apart and rebuilt it. Snow came early that year. The first flakes were light, but the mountain did not relax after they fell. The boy saw signs others missed. Birds moved lower. Trees cracked without wind. The ground felt tight underfoot, like it was holding weight already. In the village, people prepared the usual way. They stacked wood by doors. They patched roofs. They laughed louder, as if sound could scare winter away. Up on the slope, the boy worked faster. He buried the lower walls deeper. He curved the roof more. He sealed cracks with clay and pine resin. Inside, he built inner doors, one, then another, each smaller, each heavier. He stored food underground where the ground stayed calm and cool. He hung a simple wooden gauge near the wall, marked by hand. One afternoon, a group of men climbed up, breath sharp in the cold air. "You can still come back," one said. "Winter won't forgive mistakes." The boy looked past them at the sky. Clouds layered thick and slow, like walls closing in. "I'm not making a mistake," he said. "I'm making room." They laughed and left. The wind rose 2 days later. It came steady, not wild. Snow followed, soft but endless. The trail began to fade. The village lights blurred behind white sheets. The boy finished his last task and stepped inside. The air felt different the moment he closed the door. Not hot. Not cold. Held. Quiet. Outside, laughter stopped. The storm did not end that night. Or the next. As the snow deepened and the wind sharpened its teeth, the villagers began to wonder if the boy had already lost. High above them, buried into the mountain, the boy sat by a small fire and listened. Winter was finally coming, and this time, it came angry. The blizzard arrived like a wall, not a storm. Wind slammed into the village before sunrise, bending trees until they screamed. Snow followed sideways, sharp and endless. Doors rattled. Roofs groaned. By noon, the path between houses vanished. By night, the world outside turned white and blind. People rushed to seal windows. Fires burned fast, then weak. Cold crept across floors, climbed legs, stole breath. Every hour felt heavier than the last. Someone looked up toward the mountain. "He won't last," a man said. "No one can live up there now." But the mountain hid its answer. High above, the boy closed his outer door and stepped into stillness. The roar of the wind faded to a low growl. Snow struck the roof, then slid away. He touched the wall. It was dry. He checked the wooden gauge. The mark had not moved. Inside the cabin, warmth stayed gentle and steady. Heat rose from the ground itself. The thick earth held it like a secret. The layered roof trapped it. The curved walls pushed pressure aside. The fire was small, almost lazy, yet the air felt alive. The boy moved with care. He sealed one vent, opened another. He watched steam drift, then vanish. He listened. The mountain pressed from every side, but the cabin did not argue. It accepted the weight. Down below, the village began to fail. Snow piled higher than doors. Wind tore shingles loose and threw them into darkness. A roof cracked under the load. People ran from house to house, chasing warmth that disappeared too quickly. Wood ran low. Oil thickened. Fingers turned stiff. Fear spread. An elder remembered the boy's cabin. Half underground. Hidden in the slope. Maybe he planned for this, she whispered. A small group tied ropes and tried to climb. The wind slapped them flat. Snow filled their mouths. One man slipped and slid until a tree stopped him. They crawled back, shaken and quiet. Night fell early, thick and heavy. The cold grew cruel. Breath froze in the air. Windows cracked from inside. Fires burned down to ash. People huddled together, counting heartbeats. Some prayed. Some stared at nothing. Up on the slope, the boy slept. When he woke, the storm was louder. Snow pressed against the roof like a hand. Ice hammered from above. He stood and checked the gauge. 70 degrees. He frowned. The warmth had not changed, but something else had. The ground felt tight, like before heavy snow. The sound of the wind shifted. It no longer screamed. It pushed. The boy opened a lower hatch and climbed down into the earth chamber. He pressed his palm to the wall. A deep vibration ran through it. The mountain was moving. Outside, unseen, snow stacked upon snow. Wind packed it hard. A massive weight formed along the slope, silent and dangerous. The village felt it too, though they did not know why. A deep rumble passed under their feet. Dogs cried. Birds burst from trees and vanished into white. The elder looked up again. "The mountain is angry," she said. High above, the boy moved fast. He sealed inner doors. He opened pressure channels. He cleared vents with a long rod. He did not panic. He had built for this moment, though he hoped it would never come. The sound grew louder. Not wind. Not thunder. A deep, rolling roar rose from above the cabin. The boy braced himself as the mountain let go. Snow, ice, and rock tore loose and rushed downhill, faster than thought. The force slammed into the slope, shaking trees, flattening everything in its path. The avalanche struck the cabin like a giant fist. Inside, the walls groaned. The ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The boy held the support beam and waited. The curved roof split the force. Snow slid around the sides. The underground walls pushed back with the mountain's own strength. Pressure flowed through hidden paths and escaped upward. Then, as suddenly as it began, the shaking stopped. Silence fell, heavy and complete. The boy stood still, listening to his own breath. Outside, the storm weakened. Below, the village waited, not knowing if the mountain had spared them, or buried the one boy who dared to trust it. The mountain had spoken, and now the world held its breath. At dawn, the storm finally slowed. Snow still fell, but lighter, softer, almost polite. Sunlight struggled through gray clouds, revealing the aftermath. Trees lay broken, fences crushed, roofs flattened. The village shivered in silence, frozen eyes scanning the white wasteland. People dared to step outside, crunching through deep snow, hearts pounding. Every step felt fragile, as if the mountain might move again. Then, someone noticed the slope above. Smoke. A thin wisp rose straight from the buried cabin. Whispers ran like wildfire through the villagers. Could it be? Could the boy, the one they mocked, the one they said would fail, be alive? A group climbed toward the cabin, ropes tied to trees, faces pale from cold and fear. The snow was still deep, but it did not stop them. Every step was a struggle, every gust of wind a reminder that the mountain had not yet forgiven mistakes. When they reached the top, the cabin was half buried, almost invisible. Only a small vent peeked through the snow, breathing like a living thing. "Call out," one man shouted. "Are you alive?" Inside, the mountain boy pushed open a hidden inner door. Warm air spilled out, surprising everyone. It smelled of earth, wood, and quiet control. No smoke from frantic fire. No frantic movement. Just calm, steady warmth. The villagers froze. The boy emerged slowly, calm and steady, as if nothing had happened. 70 degrees. They could feel it immediately. The warmth was not from fire. It came from the ground itself, from the way the cabin was built, layered, curved, and buried. Every wall, every layer of roof, every hidden vent had worked exactly as he intended. The blizzard, the wind, the avalanche, all of it hit the cabin, and it stood untouched, alive, safe. Children ran to him, touching the walls, the floors, the curved ceilings. They laughed, crying in relief and wonder. Grown men fell to their knees, stunned by the boy's foresight. Elders examined the walls, running hands over packed earth and carefully cut wood. They whispered among themselves. This was no accident. This was genius. You knew, someone said finally, almost in awe. You knew it would come. The boy looked at the mountain, eyes calm but alert. I listened, he said. The mountain speaks if you're quiet. The villagers looked at each other, ashamed of the laughter, the doubt, the jokes they had told when the boy worked alone, day after day, building, digging, preparing. He had not been hiding from winter. He had been learning it, watching it, planning for it. They realized, slowly, that survival was not about fear. Survival was about respect, patience, and thinking one step ahead. The cabin became a refuge for the village. People brought children, elderly, anyone too weak to brave the cold. Inside, they learned warmth could be created without endless fires. Safety could be crafted with care, knowledge, and patience. They learned to trust preparation over panic, planning over haste. Outside, the mountain settled into silence. Tracks of the avalanche were visible, scars across the slope, but the boy's cabin remained untouched, proof of foresight. Nature had tested him, pushed him to the limits, and he had not only survived, he had conquered what seemed impossible. Days later, when snow melted and the village began to rebuild, people would speak of the mountain boy. They would speak of how he had turned a hidden underground cabin into a miracle of warmth and protection. They would speak of 70 degrees in the middle of a blizzard, of a boy who listened to the mountain and outsmarted it. And every time they climbed to the slope, they looked at the cabin with new respect. They no longer laughed. They no longer doubted. They whispered lessons about patience, observation, and courage. The boy remained quiet. He continued to watch the mountain, still alone most of the time, but no longer mocked. His eyes scanned the slope, listening to the wind, the earth, the quiet shifts in snow. He knew winter would come again. And he would be ready. The legend grew, a boy who built a hidden cabin, who faced storms, snow, and avalanches, and survived. Not because he was stronger, but because he understood what others ignored. The village remembered that lesson for generations, preparation and wisdom often outweigh force. And in the still, warm cabin underground, the mountain boy sat by a small fire, thinking quietly, waiting for the next challenge, already planning, already ready. The blizzard had tested everyone, but it had revealed one truth above all: the boy who listened to the mountain would always be one step ahead. No one laughed again.